It's a turning point for trains in the U.S. The federal government is making an $8 billion bet on high-speed rail development here. The Obama administration hopes the investment will create jobs, ease traffic, reduce greenhouse gases, and spur the fledgling economic recovery. It's a tall order to fill. The National Railroad Passenger Corporation, better known as Amtrak, is ready for Americans to get on board the plans for high-speed rail, but knows the track ahead is a long one.
As with anything else with rail travel and with Amtrak, everything takes commitment, time, and of course funding. So the high-speed rail initiative unveiled by the US DOT this year certainly goes a long way into getting everyone moving in the right direction. And Amtrak has been and still is working with partners to formulate plans and possible operating procedures for future high-speed rail technology and to improve the track. So it's going to take cooperation.
Many train travelers say it's about time. The fastest passenger service here isn't all that fast, especially when you compare it to systems overseas. I'm here in New York's Pennsylvania Station. It's the busiest train station in the U.S., and passengers here can climb on board the Acela Express bound for Washington, D.C. or Boston. These trains can hit speeds of 240 kilometers per hour, but in reality, they travel much slower than that.
The Acela Express reaches 150 miles per hour in a stretch up in New England in the Rhode Island area. So it can reach that, but generally speaking, it'll travel around 125 miles per hour, although it does have to slow down in certain spots because of infrastructure issues, going around curved areas.
Amtrak's 240 kilometer per hour top speed is much slower than its counterparts in Europe and parts of Asia. And not all Acela passengers are convinced that the express service is worth the extra money. Tickets can cost more than double those of the slower regional service.
It's a lot more expensive, but you only get in about 23 to 28 minutes earlier. So if I was paying myself, I'd probably take the regional.
For the cost, I don't think it's fast enough.
The Acela Express offers the only high-speed rail service in North America. The trip from Boston to Washington, D.C., which is about 700-odd kilometers, takes about 7 hours. That's quicker than a drive, but longer than comparable train times in Europe. Asian nations, too, are putting the U.S. to shame. Japan is working on a maglev train that will hit truly staggering speeds of just under 600 kilometers an hour, nearly twice as fast as the already impressive bullet train. Maglev technology uses magnets to suspend and propel vehicles. China has also pumped more than $100 billion into developing high-speed rail to replace its overcrowded system. The country already has a passenger train that travels at an average speed of around 350 kilometers per hour. But transportation department officials in the U.S. are willing to learn from their competition abroad.
We've had visits and discussions with several vendors, companies, consultants from Europe and Asia that are very interested in explaining their technology, how their processes work, their vehicles work, their value that they have in bringing that expertise, because we don't have that expertise in this country. So anybody that's United States and says, hey, I'm a high-speed rail expert, you haven't built anything high-speed except the Acela train.
California is leading the country on the track to high-speed rail. The state won $2.25 billion in federal grants towards its ambitious project of creating an intercity rail line with trains topping speeds of 350 kilometers per hour. That would make the 820-kilometer trip between Los Angeles and San Francisco take about 2.5 hours. A drive on the state's congested highways can currently take more than 6 hours. But high-speed rail systems are not cheap. California's costs are estimated at upwards of $40 billion, and the state's budget deficit is $20 billion.
A couple places where projects like this would work is through, obviously, revenue streams coming from high-speed rail service in Europe is self-sustaining once it's built, because it's a premium service. You can attract a premium audience to that. You're looking for a high discretionary rider.
But the train industry isn't just after business travelers. Railroads move more than 40% of the nation's freight. And experts say that rail is set to become an even bigger part of the nation's freight transport system in the coming years.
Yeah, rail freight is expected to become even more important. Environmental concerns are leading a shift of freight from truck only, especially to truck rail intermodal moves. There's been a lot of growth in that area recently, and in the economic recovery that's occurring now, intermodal freight is actually recovering faster than other types of freight in the U.S.
The so-called Oracle of Omaha took notice of the trend. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway bought Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway earlier this year. The railroad company's CEO called the $26 billion deal a vote of confidence in the future freight rail. But mainstream train travel faces a big obstacle in the U.S., the car. The auto industry employs 850,000 people and costs the government billions of dollars in bailouts to keep it running. Not to mention the simple fact that Americans love their cars.
I just don't really see people, getting up and going down to a high-speed rail system, and going to work. As much as I would like for that to happen, it'd be definitely better for the environment, and it would put people to work to build that. I just don't necessarily see it really happening realistically.
It's trying to get people out of their cars and the mindset of, everybody's got to have a car. So give it time. Yeah, I think it will happen.
But getting people onto trains could also mean getting them off airplanes.
Particularly in the Northeast, where you're seeing 30-minute flights from D.C. to New York, building that capacity in that corridor. And so rail has an ability, especially to high speed, to provide a travel time that's competitive to that. So if you can build and operate high-speed service, you would relieve that air congestion that is now building in many of the major metropolitan areas.
That could hurt the airline industry, which has already been battered by the recent recession. And it accounts for more than 5% of the U.S. economy. California is the farthest along of U.S. states in its high-speed rail plans. But still, it isn't due to break ground until 2012, at the earliest. So Americans and their industries will have time to get on board.